So it's more of just a, hey, you need to be mindful of these things when making bid optimizations so that you don't spike your ACOS. And if you spike your ACOS, here's a couple of reasons why that happened. Welcome back, everyone, to That Amazon Ads podcast. Andrew, how you doing today?
Doing good. Just got back from Florida. Got a nice tan. It was really great. How are you?
Nice. Good. Enough with the pleasantries. Let's dive into today's topic. Why does lowering CPC increase ACOS?
I love it.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
We got some feedback that the intros were too long. So, done. Transition sounds. Diving in. All right, Andrew, I guess we should probably first ask, we just said, why does lowering CPC increase ACOS? Maybe first we should remove the why and just say, does lowering CPC increase ACOS? Question mark. That's probably a question on some people's minds. What's your experience? What do you think most people would say if we posed the question, does lowering CPC increase ACOS?
I think most people would say yes, surprisingly. There's a lot of chatter on LinkedIn a lot of times. Maybe not in general, they wouldn't say yes. But I see a lot of times people calling out specific instances where they have decreased bids and they're seeing their ACOS increase for whatever reason.
Yeah. I probably 90% of people would say sometimes, I think would be the...
There you
like
go.
if you
That's
ask
probably
them,
a better way to say it.
Does it increase? Yeah. Can increasing, your CPCs lower your ACOS? A lot of people probably say yes, it can. Most people would say sometimes it can. But here's why we're actually diving into this topic is because I started getting really emotional, or passionate, I should say, on a lot of not negative feedback, critique on the revenue per click model, in which we teach you guys how to calculate bids to hit the target ACOS to grow your sales within your margins. Basically, how do you scale a business profitably? That's what revenue per click is doing. We are managing the cost of traffic in order to grow our business profitably. The biggest critique that I have heard people say on this bidding method that we adhere to is that CPC and ACOS are non-linear, that they are non-correlated. And this is largely pushed by, I think, two primary people who really try to push for that narrative that CPC and ACOS are non-linearly correlated. In that, number one, it's a big argument for AI. They say, you know what, math can't solve this, like simple formulas can't solve this. You need AI that can rapidly test, a million different things and bids within a day, and you take that machine learning and blah, blah, blah. That's one. Number two is people just say, Amazon, we have no idea what's going on with them. We just got to guess and test until we find something that works. And that's all it is. And basically, they both want to remove math from the equation in this scenario. So that's kind of what my, and I think your experience has been, is that we have found ACOS and CPC to be rather linear in scenarios where it makes sense. But the times when it is non-linear, because that does happen as well, there are linear reasons for why that is. I'm not sure if that made sense.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah. I think in general, from our data that we are able to pull and have access to, we can map out the correlations between CPCs and ACOS and see very tight correlations between those two individual metrics. It just gets a little bit confusing for people when they run into these different scenarios where they're trying to pull the levers in the right direction to bring their ACOS down, and they see things moving in an opposite direction. So I think the whole purpose and the goal of this episode is to just explain why that happens and how to kind of prevent those types of things from taking place.
Correct. Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway if we're trying to sum up our episodes now and put the ending at the beginning, I think, and also, sorry, I'm now making it longer, my sentence, because I don't know if you knew this, Andrew, but Elizabeth Green was one of the critics on revenue per click. She really likes revenue per click in theory, but she thinks it doesn't always work because of this reason. Now she doesn't do AI or anything, but she has like different bidding methods and stuff. So anyways, I am going on her podcast tomorrow. We're recording a Change My Mind episode where she says revenue per click only works, the revenue per click method only works sometimes. And I'm going to be trying to change her mind to tell her, no, it works all the time. The scenarios in which you think it doesn't work, or anyone, the scenarios in which they think it doesn't work because of XYZ reason, is usually because they didn't account for all the variables. Because there are other variables, like the revenue per click that we teach is not just sales divided by clicks at the end. It's pretty much on steroids. We're calculating, average order value divided by anticipated conversion rate, blah, blah, blah. All these things, trying to, create these estimates, trying to solve for load data scenarios, and also accounting for different placements, different search terms, all these types of things. So all of that kind of factors into it. And Andrew, I think when we were trying to answer this question, there were two primary reasons for why people would observe this nonlinear correlation between CPCs and ACOS, meaning there can be times where you increase your CPC and ACOS goes down, and other times where you decrease your CPC and ACOS goes up. So what were those two primary reasons that we identified? There might be more, but these are the two big ones.
Yeah, there's definitely a few different fringe cases that I could think of, but the main thing that we're seeing when this happens is usually a change in placements. So a change in where your ad is actually delivering on the page could be a cause for this disruption, or a change in the actual queries and the search terms that you're delivering on. So if you're utilizing auto campaigns or looser match types, and you go to decrease the bids on those, you could potentially pull yourself out of the auctions for those keywords altogether. And then those ads start delivering on less performing, lower performing keywords that you weren't previously targeting. But now, since your bids are lower and your CPCs are coming down, you are only able to win those auctions. So it's more so of a changing of where your ads are actually being placed that is dictating this change in performance whenever you go through and start decreasing those CPCs. Exactly.
Yeah. You have you've lowered your bid enough to take you out of the high performing auction, whether that's appearing at top of search. Let me give an example here. It's like, let's just say you currently have a keyword that has a $1.50 CPC on it. And let's just say top of search you're bidding $2 on a keyword. You have a $1.50 CPC on that. And let's just say top of search is averaging a $2 CPC, and product pages is averaging like a $1 CPC. And you're kind of landing somewhere in the middle, and you're bidding $1.50, and you're like, oh, that's really high. I'm going to lower my bid from $2 to $1. And you effectively now just removed yourself from all top of search visibility, and now you're exclusively getting impressions on product pages where ACOS was higher. And so maybe at top of search, you had a lower ACOS, product pages had a higher ACOS. You were trying to balance your CPC because overall your ACOS was a little high. So you were trying to lower your CPC just a tiny bit. And in that process, you lost all of the top of search where all the sales were coming from. So now you're not getting any sales and you're only spending on the worst performing placement. And therefore you lowered your CPC and your ACOS increased.
Exactly. So that spend allocation just shifted across placements. So it went from top of search, and now you're delivering on product pages where, not performing as well. I think it's also important to call out, like, whenever we're looking at a keyword's data, that keyword and the data associated with it is a summary of that keyword's placement data as well. So within all of the keywords individual data, we have all that placement data within that. If you have your campaigns broken out, single keyword campaigns, you'd actually be able to see that allocation on that individual keyword. I don't know. I feel like I've heard somewhere that with Marketing Stream, or maybe it was AMC or something, you can actually get that placement level performance on keywords, but I don't know if that's true. But anyway, all that to be said is that we have to also factor in how the shifts in spend we're going across those placements with those changes could have definitely skewed, like you were showing in your example, towards a lower converting placement. And, that's like a big one I think I see mostly with exact match targeting, primarily because it's less variable in terms of like the search terms that you're showing up on and things like that. All that's going to remain relatively consistent. But when you get into those broader match types, it definitely can go and skew a lot more quickly with just those change of search terms and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. Or I think especially with auto campaigns, like maybe you have a close match target where 80% of your sales are for that close match are coming from a search term that's highly relevant and performing really well, but also really competitive and has a really high CPC. And then you lower your bid just slightly on the close match target. And now you just took yourself out of the auction for the competitive, strong performing search term. And now you're only appearing on all the other search terms that were not performing well. And so the solution to this is twofold, and I think very straightforward. So how do you solve this problem? Two ways. Number one, to solve the placements thing, you have to combine placement adjustments. The revenue per click theory, you apply revenue theory. It's not a theory. The revenue per click strategy, I should say. Although it sounds very cerebral when you say it that way. We're talking about theoretical concepts. No, the revenue per click strategy, we apply that at the placement level and at the keyword bid level, and then we bring the two together. And because of that, we have solved that problem, at least for the most part. We've gotten a lot. We solve a big portion of it, and we get a lot more linear results in terms of the performance between the CPC and ACOS, because we've really started dialing things in with spending more where we're making more money. And then the second item is on the search term side of things. That's where keyword harvesting strategies are going to come through. You shouldn't be driving the bulk of your spend and sales on that auto campaign, where you're going to have that problem where if you accidentally lower your bid a little too much, you're going to lose all the visibility on the search term that was doing well. You wouldn't have that problem if you harvested out that strong performing search term, stuck that as an exact match keyword in a manual campaign, and then you can continue to drive sales there. And now you can effectively lower the ACOS on the auto campaign by lowering that bid, and you're still getting all those sales from the other keyword because you've harvested it. So harvesting, negation, and placements, when you do all those well and you do them properly, you get much more linear results with your CPC to ACOS ratio. It's ratio, whatever, correlation, and revenue per click shines and does well. So you think you got anything to add to that?
No. I was going to ask you, when you were talking about your example of that one target in your auto campaign driving all the sales, I was going to be like, dude, just get that out of there. Just get that out of there in the auto or in the manual campaign. That was first solution right there. But yeah, nothing else to add on that. I know you wanted to show some data. Is now the time that you want to show the data?
Yeah, you know what? Someone commented on one of our episodes. I said, I hear a lot of words, don't see any data.
I saw that one too. Took it a little personal.
Yeah. Well, anyways, here's some, I'll open a screen share and I will look at some data. All right. So this is, people say it's nonlinear, and we are now doing linear regression to see if that is the case. And what's really interesting about this is Andrew and I, we are looking at 3 different clients, or 3 different accounts, I should say. We're looking at daily views as well as weekly views. And we are looking at one account that I'm managing, one account that Andrew's managing, and then one account that is requesting an audit that neither of us are managing. Which, by the way, if you're looking for help with your PPC ads and you want us to look into doing an audit for you, reach out. You have to be spending a minimum, is it 20 or 30K a month, Andrew, our minimum for
30K.
30K a month. So if you're spending a minimum of 30K and you want us to give you an audit, see if we'd be a good fit to work together, reach out. But otherwise, these are the accounts we're looking at, and all we did, and you can, if you're an AdLabs user, you can do this in AdLabs, but we pulled the year to date. So this is, my client's name is obfuscated, so you can't see who they are, but we go to the year to date data. We just charted on this chart the ACOS and the CPC, and then we click this little data view thing so you can see the daily CPC, daily ACOS. Command all to copy that, paste it over into Sheets, and now we can create some visuals. So we took the daily CPC and the daily ACOS, which daily is pretty, there's quite a bit of volatility in daily data. Weekly would probably be a bit cleaner. So we did both. But if you're wondering how to get to weekly, you would just flip this toggle to weekly, do this again. Now you got the weekly data. So that's how you guys can do this analysis on your own for your own accounts, or even as part of your audits if you're auditing other accounts. And we look at the daily CPC and the daily ACOS to see, are these indeed correlated? And there's 2 different ways in which we can do this correlation analysis. Number one is you can literally just chart this on a scatter plot and draw a line that best fits the scatter plot to see, is there a trend? Very clearly on this one, there is a trend. As CPC goes up, ACOS also climbs. So CPCs, work their way up. Now it's not perfectly linear, right? There's definitely some volatility for a number of reasons. I mean, Andrew, like there's several reasons for why it won't be perfectly linear, but what are a couple that come to mind for you immediately?
Just like changing daily market conditions. I mean, I know that like the conversion rates for some of my accounts vary on different days of the week and changes, things like that. First thing that comes to mind.
That's actually, I didn't even think about that. That could be another major reason for maybe why CPCs and ACOS aren't linear could be day of week or hour of the day for particularly for B2B businesses. That's a big one. Something else that comes to mind for me too is like if your products are changing prices because you have like an auto pricer or your competitors have auto pricers, basically anything that's causing your conversion rate to fluctuate throughout the day is assuming if your conversion rate stayed constant, then your CPCs to your ACOS would be basically linear. So what we're assuming here is that any of the time that the CPCs are kind of jumping off the line and the ACOS isn't kind of staying in the trend, the CVR didn't quite move in the right direction, which again, that could be because of the placements, could be because of the search terms, or it could be because of just the time of the day of the week, or
competitors running deals or not running deals and that type of stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But broadly speaking, there is a trend here. And in linear regression models, they typically will do, they have this metric called R squared or a thing, whatever. So where a score of 1 would be perfectly linear, 0 would be absolutely no correlation whatsoever. This is getting a linearity score of 0.4, 0.385, which is somewhat linear, I think is the actual definition. Let me actually pause while I double check that real quick. So yes, an R squared of 0.385 is somewhat linear, but a little bit of a weak correlation. And again, that was because we were looking at this on a daily level. If we were to switch this to a weekly level, we get an R squared of 0.7. And that's considered a somewhat strong correlation. So, I mean, basically anything above 0.5, you can think of that as like that's, getting into a much stronger correlation. Once you get above 0.8, that's basically correlated. So getting to 0.7, I mean, you're not really going to ever get to if you get to a 1-to-1 correlation with something, then you probably did a mistake. Like you accidentally correlated CPC with CPC. And that's how you got a 1-to-1 correlation. So we don't typically see those, but something that's around 0.7, 0.8 is a relatively strong correlation. So when we smoothen things out over weekly timeframes, we see much stronger correlation. But even on a daily time frame, it's not bad. And I mean, you can visibly see the linear correlation like on the line itself, which is exactly why we're trying to, for everyone saying they're non-linear, I think one of two things has happened. Either number one, they never actually did the linear regression, or number two, they were using a non-optimized account, such as if we look at this other account that we're auditing that has not been, I don't know how they've been managing their bids, but we have not been managing them. And so far, I mean, I just started diving into it, but so far, all I've seen is that they are not doing like placement optimizations the way we recommend doing them. So when we look at their R squared ratio, it's 0.2 basically. So Andrew, I'm going to pause for a second, see if you have any thoughts to add before I just continue rambling as I tend to do.
No, I don't think I have a whole lot of like thoughts to add to this. I think that there may be some people who have never heard of linear regression, never heard of Pearson correlation before, and they've probably never seen a chart like this before, and maybe are like just trying to dissect all of this and understand it. So maybe we could just share a little bit of that
question. Look. Okay, when it comes to Pearson, I don't know. I'm not a statistician. I just was asking ChatGPT one time, how do I look at the correlation between two things? And it was like, oh, you should check out the Pearson correlation coefficient, which is abbreviated PCC, so close to PPC. It was almost a sign. Mm-hmm. But it is a correlation coefficient that measures linear correlation between two sets of data. Now, I'm not an expert here, okay? Someone out there probably is a lot smarter at this than I. All I know is that Pearson basically gives you a score, similar thing to what we were just showing on a scale of 0 to 1. Or actually, I think Pearson's -1 to +1. So a negative correlation all the way up to a 1, which tends to be a little bit of a better scoring model. So I hear, so ChatGPT tells me, in terms of really identifying a relationship between two data sets. Scatter plots and drawing a line through the scatter plots and creating this R-squared ratio isn't as strong, but it does create a better visual. So I think that's the way in which we understand it. So for each of these data sets that we were looking at, whether it was daily or weekly, between these accounts, we did both. We drew the physical line and derived the R-squared, which is like the linear regression version of identifying correlation. But then we also ran the Pearson coefficient, which you can see if anyone wants to do this on your own. You can do this in Excel or Google Sheets. You just type equals Pearson and then select, let me just redo it. You do equals Pearson, and then you select column 1, comma, column 2, and parentheses. There you go. And so the Pearson score is probably a bit more reliable just because it's, I mean, just look at that formula, man. That's pretty smart stuff.
I've never wrote a formula like that.
Yeah, whoever this Pearson guy is a pretty good man, or woman, who knows. Anyways, that is, you can see this Pearson score on the daily level goes from 0.62, which again is pretty good. It's getting up there close towards 1. When you switch this to a weekly level, we get all the way up to 0.8. So really solid scoring in terms of the linear relationship between CPC and ACOS if you are optimizing it properly. And I will admit, with this account in particular, it is in need. There are even a couple of weird things that happened this year. We had a lot of products going in stock, out of stock, relaunches of campaigns, lots of other issues that are going to create a lot of volatility there. And admittedly, can probably use quite a bit more exact match usage of keywords. So if all of that was there, if we had a bit more consistent inventory of our products, we would likely see even higher correlations here. Whereas with the non-optimized account, Pearson score of 0.4, not that great. The R-squared on the linear regression is 0.2. If we move things to a weekly level, they do get a little bit better, but still not as strong. But even when things aren't optimized, there's still decent linear correlation between your CPC and ACOS. But part of how we can account for the non-correlation, so when things are non-correlated, part of that is due to the placements. And you can see on the other accounts that Andrew and I have been managing, when you account for those placements properly, when you factor in everything, you do get much more linear results.
So,
yeah, I'll just leave it to you there.
Yeah, I got you. That's the transition. That's great.
Yeah.
So essentially what we're saying is that by dialing in your account via the way we recommend utilizing placements and optimizing bids, if you do it that way, you can get a lot more predictive results with your changes that you're going to have, and you won't have as much variability in the performance of your account potentially by doing this. I'm looking for so what? So that's pretty much what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm asking so what? Like why does this matter?
I think the so what, in my estimation, this is the biggest takeaway, is that you have to be mindful if you are reducing your CPCs and you're trying to lower your bid to lower your ACOS, you have to be aware of the fact that this could actually cause my conversion rate to drop and spike my ACOS if I'm not taking care of these other two things. Number one, accounting for my placements, making sure I'm increasing for top of search so that I don't lose that visibility as I'm reducing my keyword bid. And number two, that if I am reducing bids on a lot of broad match or phrase match or auto campaigns, that I've properly harvested those terms out so that I'm not risking the loss of sales on the search terms that were performing well. And so it's more of just hey, you need to be mindful of these things when making bid optimizations so that you don't spike your ACOS. And if you spike your ACOS, here's a couple of reasons why that happened.
Boom.
Done.
Love that. I love it. That's great. Yeah, that's really what I was trying to get to. Just like, what's the real takeaway for everybody? And that was so well put. I got nothing else to really add to this conversation, to be honest with you right now.
Yeah, we'll wrap it up, but I'll say with my concluding thought, we didn't get a chance to do this yet, but we could very easily do this in Ad Labs. Is on your placement, we have a placement tab in there. Shoot, maybe I should have not stopped screen sharing just yet, but whatever. We have a placement tab in there in which you can filter out for a specific placement, and we could have pulled that same daily CPC and ACOS trend chart for, say, just my top of search. Like, I just want to see year to date, what's the daily trend for just top of search or just rest of search or just product, but you just filter out for one or two or whatever placements that you just want to dial in on. And especially if you're doing like a single keyword campaign or a single product campaign, my guess is that you'd get the closer you get to removing those variables of like basically the revenue per click swinging or the conversion rate swinging on the opposite end of your bid changes, the closer you're going to get to a one-to-one correlation. Like, if you have one product on one keyword on one placement, top of search, that CPC, like that conversion rate should be pretty stable in terms of how that product for that keyword performs at top of search over like a longer period of time. That should be pretty consistent. Where the conversion rates are not going to be consistent might be, time of day, competitors changing their prices, seasonality. Obviously, that's going to cause some fluctuation in conversion rate. But if conversion rate is staying relatively, flat, the flatter it is, I guess, and the more consistent it is, the stronger the correlation between CPC and ACOS is going to be. All we're trying to let you guys know is sometimes lowering the CPC does cause conversion rate to drop because of the reasons we mentioned. So as long as you're mindful of that, just account for those variables, adjust for them, and then you're going to get to pretty strong correlations between CPC and ACOS.
Yeah. And as you were talking about that, I had another thought that was about, you're talking about looking at one placement's performance and correlation, but then you'd have to factor in which placement at top of search were you winning. And now we can't really do that.
We don't have that data point, but yes,
can't do
true.
that.
That's actually that is a great thought. Yeah, between appearing first top of search versus third top of search.
Mm-hmm.
But I already said here's the takeaway. But let me try to do one more, wrap it all up, conclude it with fewer words, if I can. Which is that it's not perfectly linear, but it's pretty close. And where things are nonlinear, they can be accounted for. And I personally, in my opinion, I would much rather keep control over my bids and my CPCs and just try to think through all of these things we just talked about today in order to more effectively manage my cost of traffic, rather than just throw my hands up and say, it's nonlinear, it's anybody's guess, nobody knows what's going to happen, and let's just blow through tens of thousands of dollars a day of experimenting, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Because at the end of the day, when you end up finding something that works, the math could have gotten you there faster. Like, if you would have just calculated what the CPC should be based off what we've taught you guys, could have gotten you there faster. So that's my conclusion. I am done.
And that is a perfect way to put the stamp on this episode and for us to wrap it up. Everybody, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel. We are rapidly growing. We need your support. We've got a lot of it, but we need some more. So make sure you like and subscribe, jump in the Discord, and we will see you next week on That Amazon Ads podcast.
Peace.